Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, the Getaway Artist. The Getaway Artist is an exotic Warlock glove with the perk Dynamic Duo. Convert your arc grenade into an arc soul and become amplified. Let's break down just what this exotic glove does. Holding your grenade summons a sentient arc soul for 20 seconds and makes you amplified. Sentient arc souls grant 4.5% grenade energy once per burst if it damages an enemy. Sentient Arc Soul shoots a 5-shot burst instead of a 3-shot burst. This can be refreshed by walking into your rift or another Arc Soul Warlock's rift. This exotic is going to provide us that Sentient Arc Soul. It's going to shoot a little bit faster, provide some extra grenade energy, which is really helpful for this build with Ionic traces. We'll go over the difference comparing the 3-shot burst and the 5-shot burst here. First, let's take a look at the normal Arc Soul 3-shot burst rate of fire. Now this footage is slowed down just to give you an idea of the 3-shot burst and how much it's able to shoot. And then we have the 5-shot burst rate of fire demonstrated here against this Lost Sector boss just to really show you how much the rate of fire is and how much different it is. And keep in mind, we do get 4.5% grenade ability energy every time that Arc Soul is able to damage a target. Now the cool thing about this build is that you can reset the cooldown by casting your rift or stepping into another Arc Warlock's rift. Our first aspect of the build, which provides 2 fragment slots, is Arc Soul. Let's take a look at what Arc Soul states here. Cast your rift to create an Arc Soul that fires at targets in front of you. Allies can pass through your rift to get an Arc Soul. Your rift recharges faster when allies are near. When amplified, your Arc Souls are supercharged and gain increased rate of fire. This is excellent for team play. When allies are near you in things like master raids, your rift is going to recharge faster. Our second aspect of the build is Electrostatic Mind, which provides another 2 fragment slots. Defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic trace. Collecting an Ionic trace makes you amplified. It's also important to note that Ionic traces provide 12.5% grenade energy and 15% class ability energy. It's also important to note that the Arc Soul does count as an ability kill when it kills an enemy. So we're able to synergize our fragments in this build, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but the grenades in this build will jolt the targets, so it'll sync up with Electrostatic Mind in this build. And it gets even better because in Season 21, these Ionic traces are going to give us armor charges once that goes through. Let's take a look at the Ionic traces in action here, as well as looking at the 4.5% grenade energy that we're going to be receiving from these Sentient Arc Souls from Getaway Artist. Take a look here. You can see that when we combine our Electrostatic and Getaway Artist, we'll get a 17% grenade ability regeneration. 12.5 from Ionic and 4.5 from Getaway. Important to note here is our Pulse Grenade being the choice of the grenade in this kit. With the launch of Lightfall, Bungie nerfed the Storm Grenade and instead buffed the Pulse Grenade. We have a 20% damage increase in PvE that happened with the release of Lightfall. Pulse Grenade is going to be able to tick and jolt the targets for us. Next, let's take a look at our arc fragments in this build: Shock, Ions, and Magnitude. Fragment number 1, Spark of Shock. Your arc grenade jolts targets, -10 to your discipline. So because our arc grenade can jolt targets, we're going to be able to synergize with Electrostatic Mind, and we're going to be able to generate Ionic traces. We're also going to be able to stun overload champions with the Pulse Grenade because it will now jolt targets, and jolt will stun overloads. Take a look at the clip here. We've got a 7-second grenade. We throw the grenade at 1 minute and 11 seconds, and it's fully recharged by 1 minute and 18 seconds here, just to show you the synergy between Electrostatic Mind, the arc fragment that we're choosing here, Spark of Shock, and the Ionic traces that we have in the build. And as I said before, in Season 21, those Ionic traces will also provide us with armor charges, so it's just going to make the build even better, which is going to help keep our arc surges going for master raids and nightfalls. So we do run 1 copy of Arc Surge in this build, which we'll get later, which is important because that's a 10% increase in arc weapon damage. Fragment number 2 of the build, Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target creates an Ionic trace. So between the chemistry that we have here with Spark of Shock and Spark of Ions, our grenade is going to jolt the target, and then we're going to get a Ionic trace generated from defeating that jolted target. So that's going to help synergize, just creating more Ionic traces in the build, which is going to potentially give us more armor charges as well, and it's going to give us more grenade energy, so it's all going to keep everything flowing smoothly. And fragment number 3, Spark of Magnitude. Your lingering arc grenades have extended duration. So this is going to provide 2 extra ticks on the Pulse Grenade, which is going to help us lock down tight areas or provide additional damage on champions and mini bosses, especially on overloads, since jolting them is how we're going to stun them. And as mentioned previously, that 20% increase in PvE damage with the release of Lightfall is going to make this the best pick for the Arc Grenade. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the Flex Fragment, which you can swap based on the content that you're running for this build. Now, the first fragment that we're going to look at is going to be my preferred choice, which I'm most likely going to be running for this build. It's the one that I originally had designed in this build, and that is Spark of Resistance. While surrounded, you will gain 25% damage resistance. This can linger for a little bit as well. This provides the most survivability. Being within 15 meters of 3 enemies and a linger duration of 2 seconds will provide that damage reduction of a total of 47.5% when we pair this with tier 10 resilience. And keep in mind that this can be stacked with chest resist mods such as sniper resist, concussive dampener, or melee damage resistance. Flex fragment number 2 of the build is Spark of Discharge. Arc weapon kills can generate ionic traces. This is based off a percentage. There's a 34% chance on miners, 67% chance on elites, and a mini boss or a boss is 100% guaranteed chance to generate an ionic trace. This is actually a fantastic fragment because it synergizes so well with exotic primaries like Risk Runner, Trespasser, and Trinity Ghoul. Flex fragment number 3 of the build is Spark of Beacons. When you are amplified, your arc special weapon kills will create a blinding explosion. And once again, this has amazing weapon synergy. You can synergize really well with weapons like Forbearance, with Chain Reaction, Cold Heart, Delicate Tomb, and even legendaries like Plug 1 with Reservoir Burst. Let's take a look at the stat priorities that you should be focusing on in this build. We're going to look at Resilience and Discipline at the utmost importance in this build. Resilience is really important. Pairing Spark of Resistance and maximizing your damage reduction that this kit has will help Arc's survivability and endgame content. Discipline is also very important because when we're able to jolt targets, we're then able to generate Ionic traces, which is going to help our uptime on all of our abilities. Next, we're going to look at our helmet mods in the build. We're going to be having 1 copy of Ashes to Assets to get some super regeneration on grenade kills, 1 copy of Harmonic Siphon, and 1 copy of Heavy Ammo Finder. Next, let's take a look at our arm mods. We're going to be having 1 copy of Impact Induction for 20% grenade ability on powered melees, 1 copy of Firepower, generate an orb of power on a grenade kill, and then we're going to have 1 copy of Bolstering Detonation, which is going to give us 20% class ability on grenade damage. And when you combine this with Ionic Traces, we're going to have a lot of ability regeneration. Next are our chest mods. We're going to have 1 copy of Concussive Dampener to reduce PvE AoE damage by 15%. You can change this for melee damage resistance or sniper damage resistance, depending on the type of content that you're engaging in. But you also want to have 1 copy of Charged Up so we can get some additional armor charges. Those extra armor charges are going to help our arc weapon surges that we're going to have on our legs. For our legs, we're going to have 1 copy of Innervation, 1 copy of Recuperation to provide 70 HP on orb pickup, and 1 copy of Arc Weapon Surge to give us a 10% bonus to our weapons. Next is our bond, where we'll have 1 copy of Bomber and 1 copy of Time Dilation to extend our elemental charges, and 1 copy of Reaper, where after using our class ability we can make an orb of power. Time Dilation is going to extend our armor charges by 5 seconds. And next is the full overview. A lot of people ask for this. I'm going to be having Chaos Reach, a Healing Rift. I'm going to be running a Strafe Glide, Ball Lightning. This is all personal preference in terms of the jump and the melee. Pulse Grenade as well, and then you can take a look at the armor mods here. I've got them laid out just so you guys can get a better visual look at everything succinctly in one spot. I myself have personally put about 12 hours into this build, testing all the different mod combinations that you could for the most ability energy uptime, and this is what I've settled on. Feel free to test and try out different combinations, but in my personal opinion, I feel that these are the best combinations that you can use for this build. The next part of the build is going to be something new in the video where we're actually going to look at the different enemy types. We're going to have 6 different enemy types, and 2 of them are always going to share the same champions. So once we take a look at these armor mods, we're going to move into weapons that you can kind of use as a loadout when you're fighting these specific factions that have the same types of champions. The first combination we have is Taken and Scorn, which will have Overload and Unstoppable champions. So the first weapon on our kit is a Riptide with autoloading and Chill Clip. Chill Clip perk will provide 50 stacks of slow, so 2 shots will freeze the Unstoppable, and then any further damage that they take will stun them. So that's a very important weapon to have in our kit when we're dealing with Taken and Scorn that have Unstoppable champions. The next weapon in our kit is just going to be an Arc Bow to synergize with the kit. Explosive Head is going to be helpful for stunning Overload champions and keeping them stunned, and it's going to help our range and damage overall. Our last weapon in the loadout is going to be the Queensbreaker Bow, which is actually going to be able to provide the blind effect, which is going to stun unstoppable champions. Another variant and alternate loadout is the Riptide again with Chill Clip, Trinity Ghoul for dealing with the Overload champions and generating more heavy ammo, as a primary exotic is more likely to do that, and then a Linear Fusion Rifle to deal with champions, bosses, or mini-bosses. Trinity Ghoul's exotic catalyst synergizes so well with Arc Souls because when Arc Souls get a kill, it counts as a proc for the Trinity Ghoul catalyst, which will then give you Forked Lightning, and you'll be able to get those Chain Lightning procs on your Trinity Ghoul shots. I personally prefer to use a linear fusion rifle, although they did receive a 15% nerf with the release of Lightfall. They still have great ammo economy, and you are safer to use them from far distances, and there isn't really many other legendary options that you could use in this loadout that are going to deal massive damage, aside from maybe an explosive light rocket launcher. Another option is conditional finality, an arc bow for overloads, and a linear fusion rifle. The conditional finality is going to freeze as well as ignite unstoppable champions to stun them, and an arc bow is going to stun overloads. One with shoot to loot is going to be very valuable when next season's changes come through, where shooting the orbs of power is going to actually give you the armor charges that you need, as well as pick up ammo for you. Now, the last loadout that we have is going to be called the Giga Chad Support Loadout. You're going to be running Divinity to be able to stun the Overload champions and weaken them for your teammates. You're going to have a machine gun on for ad clear to support your teammates as well. And then you're going to get that 25% kinetic bonus increase of damage by running a kinetic scout rifle to stun unstoppable champions. And it will also have shoot to loot for the changes that are going to come next season. And when I say 25% bonus kinetic damage, I mean when matching an Arc Surge, which is likely not going to happen until next season. Now, the next duo faction that we're going to be looking at is going to be Cabal and Hive. Cabal have unstoppable champions and barrier champions, as well as Hive. They have unstoppable champions and barrier champions. Now, the first loadout that we're going to be looking at is going to be using Peace of Mind or any other kinetic pulse of your preference for barrier champions. Your choice of arc special weapon, I've chosen Plug 1, and then Queensbreaker again for dealing with unstoppable champions. The reason everything is arc and arc in both the special and the heavy slot is to take advantage of the arc weapon surges that we have in this build. So that's why I'm always using arc special and arc heavy weapon. The next loadout is going to use the Chill Clip Riptide again for dealing with unstoppable champions and being able to stun them. And we're also going to be using an arc primary pulse rifle. Something with Vorpal is really great, Horror's Lease for example. And then in our heavy weapon, we're going to be looking at using Anarchy to be able to deal with champions. It did receive an ammo nerf a few seasons ago, but it does still deal the same amount of damage to champions. And it also did receive a 10% damage increase to reverse its 30% nerf that it did receive previously. Another weapon that's been buffed recently and actually can deal with unstoppables in a certain way is Grand Overture. The blind from the missiles could actually stun an unstoppable champion, and it's a great workhorse weapon. The next combo enemies are Vex and Fallen. Vex and Fallen both have Overload and anti-barrier champions shared among them. The first loadout that I like to use that takes use of Pardon Our Dust, what was formerly referred to as blinding, but is now referred to as disorienting grenade launcher to blind enemies. Then we're going to use an arc pulse rifle for handling barrier champions. And then our heavy slot, we're going to be using Thunderlord to tackle overload champions. You could potentially make the case for using a kinetic pulse rifle, Divinity, and then whatever your choice of heavy weapon is as well, because then you'll be able to take care of overload champions as well as barrier champions. And that is it for the build. I hope you guys enjoy this loadout. Have fun using it, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.